really want to zoom in on one of the big ideas. You unpacked a lot of exciting ideas here, but I want to zoom in on one in particular because it's a challenge when you move outside of our U.S. culture to many international cultures to do what you said, which is I'd rather have people ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. Many cultures with highly educated people, they're full of passion and determination to be successful entrepreneurs, but there isn't a culture of allowing you to make a mistake. Because you make a mistake, and if it's a big one, you're finished. We look at that as a learning experience. So what advice would you give to people in different parts of the world who are looking for role models, and they may not have as many locally as we have here in the Bay Area? What advice would you give to them about how do you deal with this adaptation to culture that's different from the one that says it's okay to make mistakes, it's a badge of honor, in fact, if you learn something from it?
Well, I think it is a real challenge because the entrepreneurial spirit gets completely tampered by that mentality of being shamed if you do make a mistake or being fearful of taking risks. And so I would say that if you're, in that environment, and of course we have teams, now in 4 different places around the world. So we do actually see this. I think it's important to be able to blend the local customs. I don't want to change the culture of the world. I think that would be a really bad idea. But I do think that there's a way for us to bridge the two. And so it's using great examples, whether they be good or bad, from entrepreneurial failures that maybe happen more often here in the US, but also understanding the true nuances around a local culture and why that actually might not be the way to approach something, and finding a happy medium. So I might be completely idealist. Actually, I am completely idealistic. But I think that if I build this company right, we'll actually be a global company that understands all of the different cultures of Eventbrite. So I don't want to export our culture. I want to export the best of our culture and import the best of cultures around the world. And that's my next sort of phase, I think, in my own growth as a leader, is understanding how we build those two-way highways to be able to import and export and be able to come together. Because Eventbrite's not a San Francisco company anymore. At least I don't want it to be. I don't want it to be the San Francisco company with offices around the world. I want to be better because the sum of all these amazing parts, if that makes sense. And I could probably get a lot of advice from you, hopefully.
Well, I think a lot about exactly what you're talking about. And we have experienced for about 5 decades now, the American model of middle-class aspirations has been exported around the world through entertainment, through people traveling, through sports, through all of these things. America said, here's something to aspire to. Well, guess what? It's not affordable anymore. So this world that we had of conspicuous consumption, we have to learn to adapt. And I believe that as a new middle class is emerging in markets like the South Asian countries, 635 million people are expected to be in their definition of middle class by 2020, or you want to add in India and China, you can get up with South Asia up to something like 2.5 to 2.8 billion people. And their definition of middle class is different than ours. Many of the same aspirations. They want mobile devices, they want to have a home, but it's not a 2,400 square foot home in suburbia. It's a 700 square foot apartment, in a high-rise urban area. And so they've learned to adapt. They're very resourceful. You see a motorcycle pulling a plow. You see really frugal, resourceful ways of thinking about things. And I think you're absolutely right, Julia, that we're going to see the importing of resourceful ideas of how to adapt things to an economy, which is going to mean that we're going to have to figure out cheaper, faster, better ways of doing things. And so what you're doing of opening your mind to say, not only are you going to export things to other parts of the world, but you're willing to have an open mind to import ideas. And that's a big change in the world.
Well, I think it's absolutely vital for us to understand that we're going to have to adapt. And I think that at Eventbrite, in my own little tiny microcosm, that I get to have some influence over, I feel that my goal is for us to be relentlessly in pursuit of evolution, right? So it's that nothing is ever going to remain the same, and we should be looking to evolve, which I don't know evokes improvement over time, and be open minded because I think that when you look at San Francisco particularly, which I would now consider the new Silicon Valley almost, you there is a lot of insular thinking, and we are not, I think, at the point where we're understanding the power of opening ourselves up and saying, hey, maybe we're not doing this the best way that it could be done. And that's something that I think applies to the country. I think that we could be much better if we were open-minded and almost open sourced, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I really love your observation that San Francisco may be the new Silicon Valley. When I was recruited to Apple, we're going back to 1982, I didn't know anything about computers. And Steve Jobs had this outrageous idea at the time that nobody thought made any sense, was that someday personal computers were going to be about the rest of us. They were going to be for non-technical people. And in those days in Silicon Valley, marketing was something to talk about all the features that you had in your product. And I came from a world where marketing was all about selling the experience, not selling the product.
Right.
Well, now it's several decades later, and the momentum has shifted to not just engineers building the technology, but it's about social commerce. It's about learning how to use the new things like the cell phone, now the smartphone, has really become the cultural metaphor for everything we do in our lives. And you need now designers, you need people who understand relationship marketing, you need people who understand multiple cultures. So it's a very talent-dependent world, but it has shifted from only engineers creating base-level technology, still important, to now people like yourself who come in and say, we can take the enabling technology that's been built and we can elevate it up to another level in terms of how we enhance the experience for people. And what I love about Eventbrite is that you took what had been thought of as a transaction business, get a commission on tickets sold, and you turned it into something, way beyond that. So it's really been impressive to hear your vision, to hear how articulate you are in explaining it, and I know it's going to be an inspiring message for people around the world. Julia, thank you so much for joining me.
It was an honor. Thank you so much for having me.